Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Strengthening People in the AppSec program workshop. This is the first of 3 workshops running today. We are focusing on the people aspects. The other 2 workshops are going to focus on process and technology aspects. There will be a poll at the end asking for feedback for this model. We created it as a community and have developed it to this point, but we're actually seeking your input to help make sure that it's accurate and fully describes what mature software security programs should look like at various levels. So we'll go into the details. I am markmerkow. I work at a company called Freeport-McMoran in Phoenix, Arizona. It's a copper mining firm, and I run their software security program. Pratik?
Hi, folks. Excited to be here. Thank you all for joining. My name is Pratik. I'm based here in San Jose, California. I've been in the security industry for a number of years. Most currently, I'm with Synaptics. I'm their principal cybersecurity and compliance business partner. So I have been working on overseeing a bunch of enterprise security, product security, and compliance initiatives. And look forward to the engaging discussion today. So moving on to the agenda. So as you can see on the slide, we have 4 different sections. So initially, we'll start with giving you kind of an introduction of S3M2, which is actually the acronym for Scalable Software Security Maturity Model. Then we'll move into a slight overview of what actually that whole model is. Just for anyone who is not familiar, I'm sure there will be people who may have actually come across this, or at least who are following the PBC community. The third section we have is to go into the meat of things, which is the people section that we have today. So people-specific challenges that pertain to software security maturity. And then the fourth one would be about the dimensions, the people dimensions and the attributes when it comes to software security maturity model, the S3M2. So this is just an introductory slide. Basically, just to let you guys know that in this section, we'll be examining the security controls that are covered as part of, or that pertain to software security development. It also is something that we are going to limit to the people aspect of things because the program that we are actually maturing has 3 or 4 aspects, and people is one of the key ones. You'll see people obviously in any kind of model as you have to come across. So that's actually our focus today. So these are the 5 maturity levels that we have divided the whole model into. We start with the level 1, which is reactive, and then we progress towards proactive, managed, optimized, and dynamic. Basically, as you can see, level 1 reactive would be something that would have really not enough, not many controls, a lot of the stuff that would be missing, no maturity. So something that someone who actually, let's say, approaches software security maturity and really assesses themselves, and if they find that they are missing a whole lot of things, they probably are at level 1. When you move to level 2, you have some progression there, some maturity, certain controls, certain aspects of the program already in place. Likewise, level 3 managed is a better version of the model, or when it comes to maturity. And level 4 and level 5 are the more advanced. I mean, in an ideal world, you would want to go all the way to level 5. That's the maturity that you want to shoot for. That's the one that you want to target for. Obviously, it's easier said than done. Depends on what timeline you have, what kind of other priorities you have, what kind of challenges you face when it comes to resources, processes, budget, things like that, to actually implement things, to get things in place, and to finally reach level 5. I mean, some organizations do actually shoot for level 5. They end up actually at level 4 and level 5, straddling between the 2, and it takes a while for them to finally reach that stage of level 5. There are others who actually can achieve it quickly if they are at a certain maturity level already, depending on things that they have already in place. So we'll be exploring those different levels today. Yep. So as I briefly explained and gave you an overview of the various levels. So this is basically how we have structured it. Level 1 is reactive. So here you have the very basic visibility, the very minimal level of visibility. most of the stuff you see here is pretty much ad hoc, most or all. There is no structure, there's no cadence when it comes to execution of things, when it comes to putting things in place, when it comes to even having some kind of a program. So you are only reacting. The fact that we call it level 1 and we actually deem it as reactive because you are just reacting to something that comes up. You may have fires to fight, or you may have stuff that comes up where you just have to react to it. You really have no structure, you have no cadence. If you are, let's say, inundated with issues, prioritization is a challenge there because if you don't have a clear model as to like what to prioritize, what to really actually focus on, you're just going to like take as things come along and basically react to it, which is obviously not a great way of functioning because it can overwhelm you after a certain point. It could also lead to issues which are more critical to actually not be looked at in time. Time is of the essence in many cases, so you're definitely going to have a lot of challenges if you just be at level 1 or if you're not even at that level. The second level is proactive. So here you at least improve on certain things. One of the key things is at least, okay, if you're taking on security tech debt, or if you're looking at a bunch of issues as you're coming in, you at least first want to look at, okay, what kind of prioritization you can actually create there. You want to obviously tackle things which are urgent, which are critical, versus let's say the ones which are not as critical, where you can at least space out, where you can at least like let's say give some time or at least get some time. Because this is also an area which is you're not operating as an isolated unit, you're not operating in a silo. You will have to develop cross-functional relationships. So obviously when that happens, you have people from other groups that you have to deal with. You have to take into consideration their resource strengths, their prioritization, what kind of issues they are facing and all that. And so there's going to be a lot of back and forth. And so it's obviously going to be something that you have to establish early on, because I mean those relationships will help you to drive towards other areas, I mean, of maturity as well. So prioritization becomes key. Also, you want to look for deployment of tools. If you don't have any tools, or if you're just looking at things very manually and you have a very cumbersome process, you want to obviously make changes there and try to look for things where you can at least allow a tool to do the heavy lifting. So execution of that is very key in this level. So at least you are taking steps towards maturing things. So that's why we call it the proactive stage. The third level is managed. Managed would be a progression from level 1 and level 2 because you have at least certain processes clearly defined now. You also are shooting for creating kind of like a higher level policy, something that would be overarching enough that if you have a bunch of stakeholders, and obviously this is going to be a cross-functional setup, you want to make sure you have a policy defined so that you are also like measuring yourself against that. Your stakeholders are also being kept accountable based on that. And if you have someone actually stating that, okay, what is your one voice or unified policy when it comes to this model? I mean, this is something that you can also show that, okay, you have codified it, you have gotten the buy-in, you have gotten the approval, and this is what you're going to take forward in terms of developing the program, overseeing it, governing it, the whole model. You also want to define processes. So as soon as you identify areas where there's no process clearly stated, maybe you're following certain things, but then you want to make sure that's being done consistently, or at least it's codified and stated, I mean, somewhere, so that it's easy for anyone else who comes along to follow and to accept. And if there are avenues where you identify as part of that where things need to change, you can also bring in tools, you can bring in people, resources, and whatnot. I mean, so processes need to be defined as well. So that's why level 3 is a progression. We deem it as the managed stage. Level 4 is optimized. So once you have things defined, once you have policies in place, once you feel that, okay, you have at least laid the whole groundwork and everything, you're looking for optimization. You're looking for fine tuning. You want to make sure you have things which actually can be like optimized, automated. You're trying to shoot for at this stage to make things very, very like efficient when it comes to like time, when it comes to moving things along quickly, when it comes to prioritization and all that. I mean, so you are at a very advanced stage at this point, and you definitely want to obviously improve further. So that's why we call it optimized stage. Level 5 is dynamic. So dynamic, this is basically the ideal state anyone wants to reach. Here you have already touched on everything. You've done the process development, you've deployed tools, you already have a policy in place and it's being followed and enforced. you have also done a lot of optimization. You found areas where things need to change and optimize and automated and all that. So finally, you reach a stage where you feel like, okay, now we need to focus on other tasks. So threat modeling, I mean, which is supposed to be a running exercise and ongoing thing, is something you would also factor in here, because you want to make it, you don't want to make it obviously as a static exercise. You want that to be a dynamic, proactive exercise. And so you want to factor that in at this stage so that you can actually assess the state of things as things change, because the threat landscape changes very quickly. As you know, these days, new issues come up pretty much every day. You see the vulnerabilities also showing up. So you want to make sure that you are creating something also which will sort of address those or factor those in, and constantly actually keep modeling so that you are at least aware of if there's a new threat vector that arises, how do you tackle it? Do you have the tools? Do you have the people? Do you have things in place at least that can actually look at addressing that? So you want to make sure, I mean, you focus there. But that all happens after you at least have all the groundwork set in, you have all the other things actually in place. So that's why we keep it at level 5, and that's the ideal state that we want to reach. So yeah, moving on, challenges. So this is just going over some of the common challenges that we have seen. There could be others. We thought of it covering the most common use cases here. So one thing is that you will come across, the very first one is like, you're dealing with people here. You're trying to build application security team or product security team. You don't have any budget. You are actually initially not given much, and so you figure out, okay, like what's the best way to actually approach this. If you're engaging with a lot of developers, you want to make sure you want to identify which ones actually like are the ones that you want to that you can rope in, that you can actually make an extension to your security function. So one of the challenges that a lot of people sometimes even face here is that they don't have enough developers who care about security. I mean, they come across that situation in many cases where there is a huge development group, but then most don't care about it. They are already using practices and processes which don't factor in security, or let's say there are times when they would think of something from a security angle, but it'll be too late. It'll be already something that they have already released out, and this is like a post-production sort of aspect where they actually look at things. So you definitely want to address this challenge early on and to make sure, I mean, that you identify ways of addressing it. The second thing is security training. So you want to also invest in developing better developer security training, because again, these are the people that you will work with, that you're going to engage pretty much on a daily basis, that you're going to be that are going to be your eyes and ears, an extension basically of your security function, whatever actually you're targeting. So if there is a situation where whatever training they have received is very thin, is really not covering much, they probably haven't found it relevant or something that they can take home, you definitely want to also see that that challenge actually gets addressed. So this is another one that comes up. The third one is lacking security champions, which is again, I mean, tied to the other ones where, okay, there are not enough folks in the team, or they haven't been trained on, or they've never looked at issues from a security aspect, or if they don't have that kind of a mindset, or maybe they don't have enough bandwidth or something actually to really take on anything, even if they have an interest. You definitely want to address that as well. You'll have to figure out ways as to like how you can actually like tackle that, because that's another challenge that we have seen a lot. The other piece is also about having some kind of like security awareness, and this is not just generic security awareness that, let's say, across the board gets rolled out. We want to make sure people have awareness which is AppSec-centric also, so that they are aware of issues, I mean, like much broader than the generic sort of stuff that gets sent out, because you also won't just be like, let's say, limited to the development team or the engineering team. You would also have to engage with, let's say, the product side of the house, the product managers and other teams. So you want to make sure that when you design even some kind of training, you also look at that audience, you look at that particular group as well and see, okay, what would be useful to them? How would they actually find the relevance and the significance when it comes to security? So you want to also target that, and that's also another challenge. A lot of times, I mean, the training gets limited to one group or one set of audience, and there isn't enough investment done for other groups. So that's another piece that we see also as a challenge. Yeah. So on the lone developers, the very first one that I had touched on, the ones who actually like you have a very small group or something. I mean, you have sort of issues there. Like some of the common ones that come up is like, okay, you have few people that raise software security issues. So again, the source of security issues, I mean, let's say this is also one of the crucial sources. I mean, you are also having a very limited view, because if you have few people, whatever they have access to or whatever know-how they have or an understanding that they have, they will at least, I mean, maybe bring up those issues, but then beyond that, you won't really see anything. So you're not getting the whole picture again. You're also not getting the holistic view of things. You also then have to actually figure out, okay, I mean, like who else you can rope in or how you can expand that, because you want to have a foothold into across the board. I mean, like if you're dealing with application security, I mean, you want to make sure your whole product line actually, because securing that, I mean, falls in your jurisdiction, or it should, I mean, technically. So you want to make sure you don't have a limitation there with too few people and too few bringing up the issues. The other piece is no one has a mandate to keep up to date with that. This goes back to getting the buy-in, making sure you have communicated the significance of AppSec to the higher levels. You obviously want to have a policy in place. You want to also make sure that you have a structured program in place so that you can socialize that and make people aware that, I mean, this is what you are actually targeting. This is the reason behind it. These are the benefits that the organization is going to get, and how you're going to structure it and all that. So you definitely want to do that early on, so that once you get the mandate, it can actually like make things easier in certain areas. I mean, because when you have to rope in people from other groups and other teams, you want to make sure they are already aware that, okay, this is something up and coming, it's being built, it's being matured, and you at least have the mandate actually to move forward. Management has none or low software security skills. Yes, I mean, again, this is another group that you want to also look at and think that, okay, what can management actually like derive from this? Like what kind of understanding you should actually create for them, so that they at least have some awareness. They don't need to know all the technical details. They don't need to go. They don't need to understand, okay, what's a specific issue here, which actually like is related to this particular system or library or something. I mean, no, I mean, you don't need to go that granular, but you want to at least, I mean, give them an understanding as to, as an organization, as a setup, or as a function, what kind of issues you are actually like looking at on a higher level, and then how is that a risk? Like maybe like when you engage with them, like make them understand that this is actually a risk, and what kind of risk is it? I mean, is it something very critical? Is it something very minimal? Is it something that won't really impact? What kind of like an impact would it have? What would be the implications if, let's say, that risk is not addressed or remediated or something? So you want to definitely make the management aware, because that will also help in many other ways, because when you have to get buy-in, when you have to actually make sure that, okay, you have to add more resources and all that, and you have to go to them for budget or things like that, they at least know that, okay, I mean, this is something that's a critical function and that's being done, and they need to see that. The other piece that you also face is that there's no one apparently in charge of anything related to software security. A lot of times you don't have a function created, and so no one knows exactly, okay, like who to go to or who is responsible. You don't have that defined. There are multiple players who are, let's say, focusing on things that they actually work in, let's say in a silo, and they actually don't have anyone overseeing them. Or a lot of times there could be redundancy in work, where two people in different groups could be looking at the same thing or trying to target it in different ways, instead of actually coming together, collaborating, trying to figure out, okay, like what's the best strategy and how actually that can be like addressed in whatever time frame. So you see that too, I mean, with fragmentation, with environments which are siloed, where there's not enough communication happening. So that's another challenge when it comes to people that we see that people face. The other piece is internal developer software training. It being slim, again, you want to make sure that there is like clear evidence when it comes to once the training is imparted, what level of sort of like what level of actually like engagement do you foresee? Like, do you see people actually like taking that home, actually starting to implement things based on that? You want to make sure, I mean, that at least there is some way of tracking that. I mean, because you just don't want to roll out something and like as a one-off and then think that, okay, this is it, you've covered everything and they should be able to take this on and get the road running. The other piece is also participation with external bodies working on software security issues. You don't see a lot of that happening. At times you are working internally. you don't engage with external bodies, and so the feedback, or let's say the input that you get with things changing in the industry, or if there is a new approach that someone is actually using, or a different model that they are using, you don't see a lot of that also actually getting sourced in. So you need to make sure, I mean, there is enough participation. You want to engage, you want to actually keep yourself up to date with things, and make sure, I mean, like, people at least have a clarity and understanding as to what you're doing. I mean, the exchange of ideas, the sharing of things helps. I mean, it's a two-way street. I mean, it's a win-win situation, the way I see it, because it helps everyone. I mean, in the end, like, you're getting something, you're also learning something at the same time. I mean, so it's just a way of actually like engaging, and that should be encouraged more and more. The other piece is also about looking for roles like beyond development and operations. So design and training beyond that, as I touched on earlier. So just make sure that you have that kind of sort of factored in as well as part of the challenge. Okay. This one is about security champions. So a lot of times you see organizations have like security champions that are lacking. You don't have, let's say, people that have that kind of mindset. You don't have the leadership also that encourages for people to actually like think like that, or actually address issues or think of an issue from that perspective. So no one shows that kind of leadership. There's less responsibility also, or no responsibility rather, actually, when it comes to measuring, okay, what's happening on the when it comes to improving security, or when it comes to, let's say, I mean, like, measuring as to, like, okay, if we need to implement something, I mean, like, are we actually making the right investment? Are we doing enough work there? Are we actually changing things, like, tangibly also? There's no evidence at times you see of a community of like-minded people. So even within the organization, if you don't have a function like that created, and you don't even encourage a community like that to be created, you don't have, even if you have people that are spread out, you don't really bring them on board and bring them together, and people are not clear as to who is doing what, or what level of work they have, or how they could actually, how you can help them, or they can help you. The other piece is also there's no one actually who wants to take the lead, who wants to actually go out and like drive things, oversee things, discover, publish, advocate for the best practices that are being used in the industry. So all that also actually can be a problematic thing, and that affects the whole setup of security champions. So definitely, those are all the common challenges. The other piece is about like having a broader AppSec awareness. A lot of times you don't have. I mean, beyond development, again, the focus has always been a lot of times with developers, working with developers that you're near abroad. Like, I mean, you're working with people actually that you engage with on a daily basis. You look for, okay, developers or the engineering team, but then you don't look anywhere beyond. You also don't have any mechanisms where you actually share concerns or requirements or policies and all that. So again, that affects awareness, that affects engagement, that also doesn't actually like make people sort of like provide you something back in terms of feedback or input or sources and all that. The mandate is not there. Again, that touches on some of the points that were covered earlier. So you want to make sure the execs know, they are aware of the significance, and you have received the buy-in from them as well. And then also the improvement when it comes to developing a community like that for security. I mean, like, it's not just one structure you create and that's it. You want to make sure you have that operational and running, and then improving as well with the level of engagement and everything.
Thank you, Pratik.
Thanks, Mark.
Thank you. That was great. So at this point, we've seen all of the challenges related to these various dimensions, we're calling them. And these are all indicative of low maturity, where all of these challenges are in place that kind of put up barriers to setting up a software security program. So as we developed the model, we went through each of the 5 levels of maturity to determine what kind of attributes or features are there that appear for these various levels of maturity. So at level 1, for the people area, these are very similar to the challenges you already saw. There is a volunteer program of software people who just kind of are interested, but they're not really organized or mandated to do anything. They're just kind of in there. So these might be developer-led special interest kind of groups related to security. No dedicated software security resources built in to the organization. No mandate for software security anywhere in place. Under training and education, no program, no mandate for it. Under the security champions, same thing. And under software security awareness, same thing. As we move to level 2, we start seeing indications of maturity starting to show up. So under people, we have some dedicated software security resources. People out there may be interested enough or given the right by management to actually address things that they believe are needing attention. Under training and education, there may be some foundational or introductory training. Some developers may take it upon themselves because they see value in it and want to be better developers. Under the Security Champions program, we may see some ad hoc appearance of people showing up as, potential leads for development teams on security topics. And under software security awareness, there may be an initial or generic security awareness program somewhere in place. As we move to level 3, managed, now we see a security champion program in place and security champions present on every development team. So that there is enough commitment there to make sure that security is addressed in all development activities. Under training and education, we see role-based training being introduced, and training programs are useful to help identify potential security champions that will, become part of a formalized program as the maturity of it moves up. And under software security awareness, there may be some development of tailor-made and role-specific security training going on. Under the level 4, optimized, now we start seeing lots of indications that the program is maturing in these areas fairly rapidly. We see security champions, if they're present in the organization. A community around them is formed and operating. So there may be, monthly meetings or town halls or brown bag sessions or any other kind of forum where they're brought together to share information and learn from one another. Under training and education, we see the role-based training is refined for all the various roles that need to be covered, and metrics is starting to get collected. Refresher training is introduced. This is important in organizations that have regulatory requirements like PCI DSS, where it requires annual training related to software security. Badges of honors, as people start to move through these, there may be evidence of badges showing up, so people can advertise that they've completed this training or hold this kind of certification. There may be just-in-time contextual training showing up. So in other words, maybe there's some vulnerability that's become an endemic problem across the organization. Maybe somebody has put together some kind of training on how to attack it and address it for everybody. And then we may see customized capture the flag exercises, whether it's rolled out internally or brought about from the outside. These tend to be very popular with people. So the more that you can do that, the more engagement you're going to tend to see and more interest, and the network will continue to grow organically. Under the Security Champions program, we have a community and a network of them functioning and working well. Under software security awareness, we may see more capture the flag type exercises, cyber range exercises, bringing in guest speakers from the industry, doing some regular brown bags on specific topics related to software security. There may be established communication channels set up. So there may be a Slack channel for letting people who need to know about security issues get instant notifications. Issuing security advisories and bulletins. That's a indication of a very mature organization where problems are communicated officially, and recommendations on what to do about it are common. And then discussion about software security breaches are also common. So you may find people talking about incidents and what to do about them or how to prevent them and the things like that when people get together. Under the dynamic, it becomes much more mature, with security leads and security champions contributing reusable code. So rather than asking every developer to reinvent the wheel every time they try to solve for cross-site scripting, for example, there may be a reusable component that is just simply included in all applications that takes care of that for them, so they can concentrate on business logic and less on security controls. And best practices are documented for sharing across all of the development efforts. So as people need to know about these, they're easily found. This might be in wikis that the development team accesses using Confluence or Azure or whatever other mechanism that is right at the fingertips for developers. They could get to whatever they need in a couple of clicks. Under training and education, advanced degrees or certification is encouraged and paid for by the company, and refresher training expanded so that it becomes more meaningful and less of a checkbox activity. Under the Security Champions program, active contribution from these security champions, as we mentioned, contributions of reusable code, things like that, best practices and standards related to software security. And then finally, the security awareness program itself is run by the security champions. They subsume the program and operate it from that point on. So they take ownership of it, and actually it becomes something very meaningful and important. So those are the 5 levels and the attributes that we found associated with them. In our poll, we're going to ask about anything that you might think is missing and where it might belong. We also have a chance to measure your own maturity against these attributes for each of the 4 areas that we talked about. So here, this is a little bit of an eye chart, but if you project it fully, it's actually readable. And at this point, we'd like to put up the poll for the people section. We should have a link. Please scroll down to the resources on the left, and you'll see the polls. Okay, there's a link in chat that will take you to the poll. We're going to leave the people section summary up on the screen to help you decide what level you may be at and anything that you think might be missing. I'll give you a few minutes to create that. Good poll. Thanks. Thanks for that. I got 7 after, but 4 or 5 minutes. Make sure everyone has a chance to fill it out. We'll be using what you provide as feedback to this workshop and to the model itself. So as we amass these attributes that you think should be added, we'll try to determine where they might go and what level they might be associated with. Another couple of minutes. Another minute. Okay, I have 12 after. Should be enough time. If you need to still respond to it, the link there is in the chat before we finish. Basically, what we hope will happen from this point is in the short term, and you'll see the slide in all of the 3 workshops for the process and technology that follow. We want to, bring the conversation to your teams and your company. We want you to actually help review the components of the maturity model, talk to people within the organization, tell us if you think that it's actually useful for assessing maturity according to industry best practices, and measure where you stand according to your business needs, and maybe decide what is the next level of maturity that's appropriate, and ways that might indicate that that is happening, or ways that make it happen. We'd be interested in hearing about that. And in the long term, aligning your maturity with business objectives, obviously that's a big one. Defining a long-term vision and goals for the AppSec program, and prioritization of initiatives and roadmaps for implementation. So we are also planning workshops related to this over the next few months, starting in August. There is a link in the chat for filling out your interest in participating in these, and maybe help decide where to hold these workshops in person. So if you could take a look at that and fill out the form if you're interested in following this, that would be really great. And I do believe that is it. Pratik, do you have any comments, thoughts?
Great coverage, Mark. Again, it was nice to see you today, and yeah, thanks to all the ones who actually were able to join in during our session. So hope you guys at least were able to take home certain things. Hope at least it was insightful. Even if you have come across these challenges, just think of like what else you can do, actually, what kind of ways you can address it. It's always an evolving situation. It's always an evolving game. You have a lot of things. I mean, there's no right or wrong. I mean, like whatever actually works within the setup that you're in. Actually, I mean, we don't prescribe that. Okay, I mean, you take this approach only and not something else. So definitely, I mean, take this on, and if you can actually also provide your inputs through whichever channel, that'll be great as well. So thank you all again for joining.
Do we have any questions at this point? I'd like to open it up if we do have some. You can type your question under the Q&A. Here's one. What are the common challenges that organizations face when it comes to achieving AppSec maturity, and how can these challenges be addressed effectively? You want to take that one, Pratik?
Sure. Let me see. What is the question, Mark? I didn't hear you fully. Is it posted in our chat? I'm trying to actually find it. Or if you can actually mention the question again.
Sure. It says, what are the common challenges that organizations face when it comes to achieving AppSec maturity? Common challenges that organizations face for achieving AppSec maturity. We talked about some of them, but are there any other big ones that come to mind?
I think outside of the people one, I mean, you definitely have other aspects, so process and technology that you'll have other presenters covering today. They will definitely also highlight a lot of challenges pertaining to those areas. Those are also key pillars. I mean, people definitely is one of the key pillars, but then you also have process and technology and other areas. I mean, so definitely, if whoever actually wants to stay on further, and if they are able to at least, I mean, see the additional tracks, they should be able to at least get some more insights pertaining to those. Within people, I think what we had covered was kind of broad in terms of the usual sort of like the general challenges that people face, or at least within the people specific side of things. So we touched on the most common ones. There could be others that might come along. I mean, there could be something pertaining to issues with developing the security champions program, or there could be issues with budget to actually, like, let's say, add a certain sort of training module, or bring in a training provider or something. or have someone who can actually train on certain things based on what kind of tech stack the organization has. That could even be something pertaining to like the headcount increase or the headcount reduction. Because if you don't have people, if you don't have, whether it's within, whether it's dedicated security folks within the security team, or even as an extension as part of the Security Champions program, if you don't have any, if you don't, there's no resource, I mean, you really are, I mean, constrained and handicapped at that point. I mean, so I would say, I mean, based on the setup that you're in, take like use this as sort of a set of like guidelines, and try to actually go and assess yourself and figure out like what are the other issues that you would face. I mean, you'll probably come across many other things. I mean, all the way from, let's say, getting the management buy-in to like the very sort of like nitty-gritty of like getting something rolled out, or at least training someone, or having them look at certain things in a certain way. So I'm sure that it just runs a whole gamut, and it should actually like at least help you enlighten. I think that the you also have to approach it from a threat modeling perspective, if you can. If you don't have a model, just think of like what are the issues that are there, what other issues come up. It may not be apparent outright. It may not be apparent at the beginning. This is again going to be needing engagement and conversations with the teams that you work with, because if you have the dedicated security resource, you may not actually have complete insight into things. I mean, it's not even possible at times, because you're not looped into everything. You can't be in all meetings. You can't be in all discussions. So you definitely want to have an extension, create those relationships, and then start sourcing in what they think, what challenges they face, and then what you see also as a challenge, and then basically hash it out. I'm sure, I mean, that'll bring up a lot more, and also actually help in terms of better decision making.
Excellent. Yeah. If you have to attend our other workshops today, you'll see some of the other challenges related to process and technology, and they're all kind of related. I mean, it's one program after all, just different aspects, different ways of looking at the prism. So stick around, and you may get that and lots more answered. I don't see any other questions. No.
Looks like, yeah.
Okay. So thank you, everyone. We really appreciate your attendance here, and hope to see you in another session coming up shortly.
Thank you, folks. Thank you all for joining in. Thanks, Mark.
Thank you, Pratik. Bye.
Bye.